presented by Edge Radio.
Hello and welcome to Media Shower on Edge Radio 99.3 FM.
With your host, Lochie and Qom.
How you doing today, Lochie?
I'm doing alright.
That's the way. I'd like to apologise first, I think. I had a late, restless night. Couldn't sleep after watching the horror movie we're about to review. Very good today.
You think, eh?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
Very much. Would you like to give an introduction? What will we be reviewing today, Lochie? Big drum roll and announcement.
Well, it shall be the one, the only, Five Nights at Freddy's.
Absolutely. 2023 film came out last year based on the game. That's
Came back, released all the way back in 2014 as originally a little indie horror series, but turned into a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, so I haven't really played the game. I've seen some clips. I know the premise of it, I think. So I'm kind of coming in from a neutral view on what I thought of the movie. But you've played the game, Lochie. Was it... Maybe introduce us to the game premise and a little bit of... Did you think it did well based on the game? Or do you think it was a good adaptation or a bad one?
Well, I reckon I'll start with a rough translation of the premise of the game. So, the base is you're a security guard who is basically super glued to your desk, and your only tools are a bunch of hallway monitor cameras and a few doors and lights, which basically help you go through the night between the hours of 12 to 6 a.m. And you have to get through the whole night thinking that's just simple, right? Just don't fall asleep on the job. Wrong! Because there are spooky animatronics coming after you. You think at first, oh, are they just evil out to get me? Do they just think that I'm annoying them? But if one has a keen eye and looks for out certain clues in the game, they might find something a little deeper. And fans over the years have accumulated the story by itself, whereas the creator of the game, Scott Coffin, more or less didn't tell or show us the story. I think he wanted the idea of keen-eyed people to maybe put some dots together, and then by the time the second and the third game came out, well, there was just more and more dots to connect, because things between stories in games just keep adding up, essentially. And I only managed to personally make it until, I don't know, I think it was the third or fourth game. But ever since then, there's been more countless games, spin-offs, books.
It's got a big fan base, this game.
It's
for sure
one of the biggest fan bases of the modern time, which is a pretty big weight to hold on your shoulders, I'd imagine.
It's impressive considering, as far as I know, it's not from a AAA game company. It's a very indie
it is
game.
not.
Yeah. So, a few creators, and I think it's unique. I think the animatronic monsters are essentially the cartoon characters for children, but they've twisted and haunted, but I think that's kind of what makes them unique the most. You don't really see those sorts of characters in a lot of horror movies or games.
Yeah, what you initially think is projected to be something friendly, but to some could look misleading. For some people, instance, it immediately reminds them of the old 1980s animatronic aesthetic, what you get at a Chuck E. Cheese, for example. The characters would move at a very awkward pace, and some of the kids and the parents even reported in real life like it was like just disturbing and weird, and sometimes even when they required maintenance, sometimes they would end up being faulty, and well, it'd take ages for them to be repaired.
Yeah. I
And
was thinking-
so Scott basically just took that idea and thought, oh, okay, why don't I turn that into, well, kind of like into a little horror series, but yet a little something devoted for those who or like want to be mystery solvers, if you will. But
yeah.
it's a little complicated to explain. But the impact is certainly not without. It's certainly non-avoidable. I'm not sure how else to say that really. But as for the movie adaptation, I'd say it holds between a mix between safe but bland. But what I mean by that is the bland comes from more or less the dialogue and some of maybe the choices of the characters. But the way I mean safe is like you're gonna get everything that any diehard fan throughout like almost 10 years now would any fan back then would expect throughout any of the games, even just slight little references that don't have to be within that one set story, but yet just still there to please fans regardless. It's like,
Okay, so I was surprised with a lot of it, but I'm not a fan of the games really. I haven't played them at all. But there were lots of things all I know is you watch security cams and you fight these monsters essentially. And I thought the lore really I thought was intricate, and the story surprised me in many ways, but maybe that's just because I had nothing to expect.
yeah, and
I really enjoyed it. I will say that. I wasn't expecting it to be so complicated and intricate, and I thought all the characters had their own plots that kind of tie up nicely. There's about 3 or 4 different plots going on, and they all kind of merge at the end in a nice, tie of the bow.
yeah, I thought that was handled safely personally because it felt like more of a standing ground for what potentially could be the possibility of more sequels to come. Let's say,
Yeah.
because I mean, with the immediate success of the first film, which I believe you stated earlier, it had a budget of 20 million.
Yeah, so it had lots of production issues with Warner Brothers.
This movie is notorious for having
It's almost like
one
a
of the
cursed movie.
biggest pushbacks of all time.
Yeah, so they started production in 2015 with Warner Brothers, and it eventually changed to Blumhouse Productions, and they do a lot of horror movies. They're kind of relatively low budget, like 10 to 20 million, and they'll essentially do any gimmick, and then they try and make a huge profit off the horror movie of the season, I guess, which I kind of like in some ways. Some of their movies I love, some of them I can't stand. But yeah, only $20 million, and it went on to make I think it was 300 million. Well, close to 300 million. 297
Yeah, because
worldwide, which is, that's
crazy.
quite a profit, yeah.
just because now it seems that we are now at the golden, or I wouldn't say golden, but more or less at an age where video game adapted movies are becoming more accepted and more acceptable for the wider range of public.
Yeah, there was kind of a running joke for years that
Almost
do not watch these sort of movies, they're all terrible.
as if it were doomed to fail to begin with, but yet it somehow was able to just bypass slowly. Yet I think it all started, like, I think you mentioned this to me with like the Sonic the Hedgehog movies.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. Tomb Raider, I think, is an old one that kind of I enjoyed. But I think that for years, that was the only one people could cite. You know, there's the Hitman movies, they're terrible. I think there's a Splinter Cell movie that's terrible. All the Halo stuff, I think, is horrible. But yeah, recently there's been some good ones. Super Mario Brothers, you mentioned Sonic, that was good. Fallout, I really enjoyed, and Five Nights at Freddy's. There's been kind of a resurgence, and I think the issue is why they were terrible for so long is because if you give the fans everything they want, they say we've already seen it, it's boring, and the normal audience says, well, this is trash. But if you don't give the fans what they want, everyone else, they'll come out and
Raise the
complain.
pitchforks.
Yeah, they'll come out and complain the other direction. So there's a nice balance that you have to find with these sort of movies. And you have to kind of, you're tapping into an already existing audience, so it's hard to do.
How do you please all of them? One might think to themselves, when if anything, that possibility is far beyond what they could possibly think of. Even we couldn't handle that type of thinking power alone.
Yeah, they'll
But who
the
knows?
stories
I
in
could be
games
wrong.
aren't necessarily written to be feature films.
Yeah,
Super Mario Brothers wasn't written as. It's just about a guy saving a princess. Essentially, it's not.
But like the
written
Super Mario
to be
Brothers
a
movie.
movie.
Like the Super Mario Brothers movie, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, very, like I said earlier, very much safe as a means of not only to somewhat ease regular moviegoers, but to, of course, please the hardcores.
Yeah. So, like I said, that's interesting. I hadn't really very little lore, but I enjoyed it even from someone who I've just seen the memes. So as a diehard fan, it's interesting though that you kind of thought they played it too safe.
But then again, I am not that aware. If anything, I personally believe that it is one of the hardest franchise to be invested in due to the fact that it is so complex and so complicated that I don't even know how to describe it to someone who doesn't even know what the games even are, essentially. It almost feels like one of the biggest tasks man could possibly do.
I suppose that's the issue with so many games and spin-offs have kind of stretched this lore across, years, and they're trying to compact it into a 90-minute film. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Yeah, this one felt like trying to
They just
fill
tick the
almost,
boxes.
almost 10 years of content into a nearly 2-hour movie, which, granted, could have been used its time better, but I still don't mind what we got in the end. I mean, well, the actor who's the bad guy in the movie, Matthew Lillard, personally stole the
Spoilers,
show.
Lochie. Spoilers.
We don't.
That's alright. It's been out for a while. You spoiled it for me though. I'm putting this complaint out in public.
Well, I don't know how.
Hey, go
That's
watch
going
this
to be
movie,
receptive.
and this is the villain. I went, That's fine. I'm joking. It's not
that's
a
bad
big.
on my behalf. Then
No, it's not a major flaw in it anyway. And if you're paying attention, you can assume that is the case.
well, I probably more likely said that to you under the impression that you may have been aware of some kind of context, but you probably don't know next to it almost any of it, right? Like you stated.
No idea.
Yeah, so
I know security cams and animatronics.
yeah, it is surprisingly way more complex than what the basis states it is.
Yeah, I will touch on, you said they played a little safe, and I kind of felt that with The filming style and everything. It felt very like acting was good, tick. Sound design was good, tick. You know, the style and sets were good, but there were no shots that I went, wow, that is like a cool looking shot. Or like there was no music in particular that I went. I think they actually played some of the theme music in the credits, but there was no shots in the movie where you hear this sort of I don't know, anything wild.
I think that
it was. I will say actually, I'll just touch on this while I'm here. It's funny. They had this shot of a can of or a bottle of soda, and it spills over and it soaks into the wood, and it's like an extreme close up of the wood fizzing up.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit funny, a little bit.
I was sitting there, I was like, that's probably the best shot of the movie. It's just wood having
Close up
fizz.
Pepsi.
Yeah, it was like
Oh no,
wood just fizzing
my bad,
up.
it's Coke.
I can't remember specifically, but I remember the wood just fizzing and me being like, that's a cool looking shot. Because, and of course, I mean, who cares about that? It has nothing to do with the movie. But it just looks so good, and the rest of the movie's so like one level flat. Like everything you can tick off is good, but it's not great. There's nothing memorable, I guess.
Unless again you're a hardcore fan.
Yeah. The other one we might talk about is the age rating on this movie.
Yeah, it applies again to the saying of me thinking that it played safe because, well, the marketing of this movie was solely directed towards children. And you know what? I really don't blame them for doing that because it wasn't originally meant to be like that. But over these near 10 years, kids have been interested over the mysteries, the lore, the characters over the years, and even they can't help but find it fascinating.
Yeah. Teenagers, I think, is probably the core demo for this.
Which I thought was initially the target demographic when it first came out, because hell, that I was that demographic when it first came out. All those years ago.
So it was rated PG-14 in America, and it was rated M in Australia. And you have, throughout the movie, lots of these... It is a horror, but you have these scenes where the death on impact scene, they cut away just before you see it. And so everything's implied. You see the shadow of someone getting murdered. You see... You're looking through glass and you see someone getting murdered.
Or you may be seeing like a first-person running perspective, but... Yeah, like you said, it doesn't feel like someone's about to almost, well, die, if you will.
Yeah, I think it falls into that. They said it falls in this style of playing it safe, and the other one is that a lot of their fans are teenagers. They want to go to the movies, and they can't if it's a over 18 movie without the parent there. And I don't know how many parents want to go to Five Nights at Freddy's. So they did limit it. I would say if they could bring out an R-rated or even MA, something where you get to see these scenes, you know, I would be impressed. I would like to watch that and compare the two.
I think the community, the fan community themselves would be over the moon. So I don't think you're wrong about that either, personally.
Yeah, it's just these cutaways, and I wonder if they did film the scenes or not, and then they just cut them out in editing.
You would have had to imagine that they would have had to maybe have a placeholder, but then maybe edit some sections out, so therefore they can play it safe.
Yeah, I got no idea. If it's out there though, release it. It would be interesting, I think, to see it. And yeah, I understand if you want to make a movie like this and you want if you want teenagers to go out with their friends and watch horrors, I used to kind of do that. I enjoy it. It makes sense to release at the cinemas as kind of a cut-up version. But then later on, give us the uncensored, release the uncut. That is my theory anyway. The other, I did still find
Speaking
it
of theory,
I
there is a cameo from the one and only Matt Pat from Game Theory in the movie. Did you notice that?
No.
Oh my god, I did
Is
not.
that the brother?
No, in fact, he was the waiter.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't. I can't even picture the waiter. So very much a cameo then.
It was a very much in your face type of scene, which I'd imagine for anyone who is aware of Five Nights at Freddy's would immediately recognize the individual who is portraying it. Just an average waiter, but nope. In the words, it's just a theory. Well, I know where most people can find or at least understand where that comes from.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't notice the cameo at all, so it must have been. I know the scene you're talking about, but yeah, I just can't really picture it. I will say they had a couple memorable actors. They had Josh Hutcherson, so he's from Zathura. Everyone might remember that as a kid, and he's from Hunger Games as well.
I was
Matthew
personally-
Lillard, who plays Shaggy from Scooby Doo.
Josh Hutcherson, I actually was not made aware of when I watched the Hunger Games like all those years ago. Even I have trouble remembering the plot of the Hunger Games, so that's something I'm gonna need to rewatch.
Yeah, a bunch
Maybe-
of kids fight to the death, essentially.
And maybe
What a movie plot.
see how his character evolves around then. And yeah, it is a blast again to see Matthew Lillard. Well, again as the bad guy.
Yeah, he plays it well. He should be in more.
What I did
Every
find
movie I've seen him in, I've enjoyed. It's kind of weird that he's not a more prominent actor.
what I did find a little disappointing was that there wasn't enough scenes of him,
Yeah,
especially him in the spoiler alert Springtrap outfit.
yeah. I will say they leave it open ended at the end though, for really the entire movie.
Oh, the possibilities are there specifically for that purpose alone.
Yeah, I almost thought at the end, I thought, wow, you're just going to leave this haunted place. I mean, there's a famous quote from Bay of Fires, 20 litres of petrol in a match solves the problem. And I thought, you got a haunted house, just solve the problem. But no, they leave everything there. The villain is kind of shown as he's probably maybe still alive. All the characters, the animatronic smaller villains are still alive.
Their souls are still not rest.
Yeah, that's right. So they have announced a sequel in 2025, and I imagine we're going to get it.
I hope that it will be that MA version that you mentioned.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still happy if they want to do a more young age rating at the movies, but give us the money when it comes out on streaming or, even DVD or whatever, if that even exists. But when you put it online, eventually.
Give us that money shot.
Yeah, give us the money
Blumhouse.
shot. Yeah, that's right. We
We want to
this-
see Foxy run.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, I'm not really sure
We
what
want
to
to see more than 2 jump scares, maybe. I don't know.
There are a few in there.
There were a few, but I didn't feel like the impact like they did back in the original. But maybe that's just because, well, I've grown up, or maybe my views of the jump scares, well, changed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought there were some cheap tricks that I liked that they used to kind of make the movie a little bit more disturbing. I watch a lot of horrors. I thought I felt the impact of this one. I enjoyed it very much.